Hey, welcome to Caritas Querens. So in this series, we're taking a look at what I'm calling Catholic universalism, a view of universalism that, on the one hand, is, in my opinion, perfectly consistent with Roman Catholic teaching, but also, secondly, is Catholic in the sense of being universal, embracing the entirety of God's revelation on eschatology. So embracing strands of revelation that deal with, or at least that seem to deal with, infernalism, annihilationism, and universalism all together, rather than accepting one of those three strands and basically trying to make the other two fit in with the one that we embrace. My view is that we can actually hold all three and see them not as mutually exclusive interpretations or doctrines, but rather as three different looking at three different aspects of the truth, three different perspectives of the same truth. So in the last video, I used the butterfly analogy to explain this, and I'm going to take a look at another analogy in this video, which maybe will shed some light on what I'm trying to say. And this is I guess you could call it the health analogy, or the cancer analogy, or something like that. And this is one of the first analogies that I kind of developed in trying to explain this to people. So here's what it looks like, okay? I'm imagining a person who has, originally I said cancer, but it could be something, it could be like some kind of parasite, like a ringworm or something like that, or not a ringworm. A ringworm is some kind of skin thing, isn't it? A tapeworm, that's what I was looking for. So something like that. In other words, has some kind of disease or bacteria or virus or something, something that is affecting their health, okay? And so I'm going to say cancer because that's the way that I developed this, but you can switch it out for some other disease if you want to, or parasite or something. I'm going to say, imagine a person who has cancer, okay? And they have cancer, and maybe they have it for a while and they don't even realize it. And little by little, it's affecting their health, and their health is deteriorating. And so really they have a couple issues going on. On the one hand, they have the cancer that has to be dealt with. That's kind of the root cause, or the root problem. But then also there are various symptoms or various issues that have kind of stemmed off of the cancer that are side effects of the cancer itself that have to be dealt with in order to restore them to full health. So let's imagine a person. Now, obviously, I know there are different types of cancer. I know that there are different ways of treating them. So I'm going to just kind of speak generically here. Just bear with me. The point here is not specifically cancer itself, but using this as an analogy, okay? So imagine that a person has a cancer that can be removed, okay? And so basically the diagnosis is, okay, you got cancer, and there's a mass wherever in this part of your body, and we're able to remove it. So we're going to surgically excise that cancer and get rid of it. Okay, so that's the first thing that has to be dealt with, is the cancer itself. Get that out of there, and that cancer, we know that cancer is in some ways sort of a perversion of our own body cells, right? Of our own body matter, and so there's something wrong, something intrinsically wrong with this part of the person's body. With there's some kind of perversion of their life there that has to be cut off and removed from them. And it ought to be something permanent. The person who's getting a cancerous mass removed wants it to be forever, wants it to be endless, wants it to be definitive, not come back, right? Once that happens, though, the person may not still be completely healthy. I mean, first of all, they have to recover from the surgery itself. But secondly, there may be other health issues that were caused by the cancer that they had for whatever period of time. So maybe they lost a lot of weight. Maybe they had other issues from various treatments they underwent. And those things have to be dealt with. So now the person also has to regain their physical health. And once they've gotten to that point, once they've gone through the process of restoring their health, then finally they can be living a full, healthy, happy, holy human life, right? So let's take a look at that from the perspective of eschatology and these three strands of infernalism, annihilationism, and universalism. Okay, again, if I were to say, okay, if I were to make a statement that this person who has cancer, that they will definitely be restored to health. That's one statement. That's like a universalist statement. You're destined for health, for fullness of life. Okay. I could also make the statement and say, but you're also, there's a part of you that's going to be separated, endlessly separated, permanently separated from this fullness of life, referring, of course, to the cancerous mass. And I could also make a third statement and say, in addition, in some way, there's parts of you that's going to have to be annihilated. Something about you is going to have to cease to exist. That cannot be consistent with this fullness of life. Okay. Again, each of those three statements might seem mutually exclusive, but I'm going to show you in this analogy how they're not. Okay. So first of all, the cancerous mass has to be excised, has to be cut off and permanently separated from the person in order for them to have a full, healthy human life. This is kind of like infernalism. This is kind of like hell. That there's an aspect of which a part of that person, and again, it's a perversion of their actual human life. The cancerous cells are not some kind of body from outside, and this is why I like to use the image of cancer as opposed to like a virus or bacteria or parasite or something like that, because the cancer is actually, genetically is like the same matter as the person that is suffering from the cancer, right? So you can say that the cancer, in a sense, is the person, is genetically identical, in a sense, to the person, or a perversion of who they are. And so that, in some sense, that person has to be cut off and separated forever, in order for that person to actually attain to that fullness of life. Once that's done, though, then the person has to rehabilitate and be restored to proper health. So the various symptoms of the cancer and maybe some of the treatments involved have to be dealt with. And in order to do that, there's a sort of annihilation that takes place. For instance, maybe if the person was undergoing radiation treatment or chemotherapy, well, at some point that has to end. It has to cease, okay? Because some of the side effects might be coming from that, and they don't need it anymore, and so it has to cease. It has to stop, okay? Other things might cease. So, for instance, maybe when they had the cancer, maybe they couldn't eat everything they could, and their strength was being diminished. They were getting weaker and losing weight and so on. And so now something that has to cease is that habit of not eating certain things or not eating as much. And gradually, little by little, they'll be restored to a proper diet and hopefully to restoring their weight and their strength and their health. And then finally, they can enjoy that fullness of human life. So again, it is by means of a kind of hell, a separation of at least part of that person permanently, and then also by a form of annihilation, annihilation of maybe certain treatments that are causing side effects, or maybe certain habits that were concurrent with the cancer and the illness itself. These have to be annihilated, and it's that leads to the fullness of human life at the end. And so I would say that again, this is kind of an image or an analogy of what we undergo in the process of theosis, in the process of attaining to the full union of life with God, to which we are destined. That's universalism. Infernalism is the fact that in some way we have to die to ourselves. The old man has to die. Our life in Adam has to cease and has to be permanently, definitively, endlessly, eternally separated from us, in order to attain that full union of life with God. And thirdly, there are aspects of us that have to cease to exist. There are certain things inherent in who we are that cannot inherit immortality. These things have to be annihilated in order for us to attain the fullness of life in God, to progress to a restoration or reconciliation with God, as we are destined to be, destined to be in union with Him. So I hope this helps. Again, I don't know. It helped me at least. This was the analogy that I first kind of developed in trying to understand this and wrap my mind around it. And I think the advantage, to this analogy is that maybe a little bit better than the butterfly analogy, it emphasizes the the end goal, being health, like how do we get to that? So it's a more human analogy than a butterfly or caterpillar being transformed into a butterfly, but also it takes a look at some of the deficiencies. So it's not just well, this is just part of the transformation, but there may be some real sin and sinfulness there, and actual sins there that have to be dealt with. And so for instance, removing the cancer, in my opinion, is tantamount to the old man dying. Is tantamount to dealing with original sin, or the sin nature, as some people would say it, or life in sin, life in Adam, being dying to sin. Like Paul says, reckon yourselves as dead to sin and alive to God. The annihilationist aspect of being restored to health, maybe cutting off some of the treatments we were receiving, or cutting off some of the habits that we had developed. That's dealing with our own defects, with our various sins or habits of sin, with our own imperfections or attachments. That represents dealing with those things and annihilating them, cutting them off, so that we can get rid of them, those things that are impeding our growth, that are obstacles to full union with God. And so by annihilating them, we're actually, they are things that could not inherit immortality, that are not consistent with the life of God. And so by annihilating them, we are actually making it possible to progress and to grow in the life of God. Okay, so anyway, if you enjoyed this, I'd appreciate if you would like and subscribe, share with others, and leave any comments in the box below. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, adios.